Sometimes if you go on Facebook Marketplace for car parts, you can get really cool things. But sometimes things are really cool, but at the same time, they're just a little bit janky. Just like this thing right here. What is going on, guys? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. So today we have a thing, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it because it's kind of ugly, but hopefully it gets the job done. So the other day I saw a Facebook Marketplace ad that was a Civic part out, and there's some things that the Civic here needs. And the one thing we need is a new gauge cluster because my RPMs don't read. I'm not sure if anything else doesn't read. This one's definitely not the original one because this only says it has 65,000 miles on it, and it definitely has way more than that. And this thing works. So I know that this thing was put in after the fact, so I'm not sure why it was put in or if this one's busted. But today we have a new one that they installed a glow shift RPM gauge on. So hopefully it works, and if it doesn't work, then I know that it's not my gauge cluster. I probably will put the original one back in, but if it does work, we'll just keep running it. And I'll show you why it looks a little bit janky. So this one has this knob to change the color of the actual gauge itself, and it looks like we're gonna have to do some wiring here too because this is all interesting looking. So we're gonna do some wiring. It's not the best shape ever, but hopefully it works. If it doesn't work and the RPM still don't read, then I know what's wrong with this one. But if it does work, maybe I might just change out the glass because this glass is a little bit cut up in a bad way here. Oh, I don't think that was supposed to happen. This one is also a little bit closer to original mileage at 175,000, and this one only says it's at like 65,000, and the car's around 225,000. So this one I trust more. So I have no clue how to wire, so this will be an interesting thing. But the first thing we're going to do is lower the steering wheel and take out the original gauge cluster. And it looks like it's only 2 bolts. I think it's probably going to be these 2 to get the trim out. And then I'm assuming it's going to be like 4 bolts in there. I don't really know, but we're just going to take it out and see what it looks like. After the plastic part comes off of, it was just literally 2 bolts. So there'll be a bolt here, here, and 2 up here. And then this should just pop right out. And then we should be good to start wiring this one in. There's like 1.5 million wires back here, so on the original one, these 2 holes right here, plugs go into them, and they're not on this one. So now the fun wiring part comes in because everything else, there's a spot like right here, there's a spot, and there's 4 plugs here, and there's 3 spots for plugs, but I don't know what's going on with these ones. So I'm gonna do some quick Googles to figure out how to actually wire this thing up because I have 0 clue how to. I know absolutely nothing about wiring, so I watched a few videos, I looked at a few tutorials, I looked at every resource I could possibly find, including the pamphlet for this gauge, and I'm just winging it at this point. So pretty much there's 2 wires, there's a red one and a yellow one. That one needs a constant source of power. So you put it in here, run the wires under, and I'll show you guys where I plugged them in at so they have constant power now. One's here and one's there. So you can see I plugged them in so they have constant power now. So this is the part of the video where I'm supposed to show you everything buttoned up and everything is going smooth and everything is clean, and I'm testing it and it's working, and that's not what happened because of the title of the video. I plugged everything in, I was gonna have my first test, and the gauge cluster caught on fire. It was crazy. Right here is the gauge. You can see that nothing on the back here is burnt. So the fire was not caused because of me, and it wasn't because of my wiring was whack, and it was nothing like that. Pretty much what happened was I wired this in, I found a spot to connect to the transmission wire, I believe that's what it was called. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna plug the battery in, I'm gonna do a first start, I'm gonna see if it's reading, if it's working. I turn on the car, the gauge lights out different colors, this part doesn't move, so that means that my distributor or my ignition coil is going bad, so that's gonna be another fix. But what happened was the back of the gauge cluster started smoking, and a little flame went poof, And it made me realize that I need to get a GoPro for when I'm doing videos like this of like wiring and installing stuff, that I can always just have it, because my reaction was probably priceless. You can see right here is where it caught on fire. It was the actual board of the cluster. And honestly, don't know what happened. It just kind of combusted, and look at that, it's definitely fried up. Don't really know what caused it. I'm assuming that when the guy took it out, either something ripped or something came loose or something got crinkled or something got wet or something got oil on it, and that is what happened. I'm not blaming this guy at all for what happened, because he said that it was running in his car just fine, and I believe him. I'm not going to say this guy was intentionally trying to set my car on fire. I'm just grateful that I didn't button everything up and throw all the trim pieces back on and then that happened, because that would have been absolutely terrifying. And I'm just grateful that it happened when it did, when everything was out of the car. So as soon as I started, it happened. I turned everything off, I unplugged everything, and I was safe. Because if it was all buttoned up and then it happened, I don't know, maybe some of the foam underneath the dashboard could have caught on fire and I could have had a serious issue. Luckily, it was a small fire, like that big of a fire. Everything just kind of smoked up, and I took everything out right away and it was fine. The next thing that happened after that caught on fire, though, was that I lost all instrument lights. And that terrified me, because I thought I fried the entire fuse panel or I busted a wire. Pretty much, when you're in your car and your lights are on, it does this sound. And it didn't do that sound for me, and I got a little bit nervous, but then I found out, and actually it took me a lot of digging to find it, if that ever happens to any of you Civic owners, that your instrument lights, so all your gauge lights just don't come on, and if your door is open and that doesn't come on when you turn your headlights on, check your number 30 fuse, because it was my number 30 fuse. I changed it out and everything was all golden again. It just sucks that I was so hyped to have this new cluster in there, because one, this is kind of cool looking because it changes colors and whatnot. It's kind of cool, and I was hoping I could actually read my RPM so I know when to shift. Right now, when I drive the car, I shift by ear, and like I know what I'm doing, but at the same time, I think this car maxes out at like 6,800, and I really don't know when that is because I can't visually see it, so I just take a guess. But looking at it, it looks like it is my distributor or my ignition coil. I'm probably gonna change out the distributor first because the ignition coil is more expensive, I believe. And apparently that's the cause of most problems with the tach in this car. For people that don't know, pretty much I drive the car and it will just go like this. And I know I'm not at 8,000 because I'm just idling, and then it'll just go like this and turn off pretty much. So I know I have some sort of issue, and I know that this is not the original cluster in the car because this car has 225,000 miles ish on it, and it says I have like 65,000. I know that's not right. Luckily though, we're safe. We got the fuse back in, so everything is back to how it was. Everything's back to normal. Low-key disappointed that we couldn't get this cluster in to work. I took some of the lights out, so I have like half LEDs in here now, but I'm gonna do a video and get the whole LED kit for the gauge cluster because it makes it look a lot more clean and a lot nicer and newer. So just a little FYI, I guess that's the right term. Just a little piece of information. If you guys are ordering things off of Facebook Marketplace, just make sure you guys have like a buyer's beware thing, because that could have been catastrophic if everything was buttoned back together. I could have actually lost the car. And that's actually a very scary thought. I don't know why it did that. DC voltage, to my knowledge, usually doesn't start fires or start smoking like that. It's not a normal thing. So just buyer beware. If you're buying something electronic, if I ever buy a gauge cluster again, I'm gonna make sure it's not tampered with. It's not, doesn't have aftermarket gauges. Nothing looks bad. Everything looks new. And now I know, because before I really didn't know what I was buying. I just kind of know it had this in there, and I was like, well, hopefully this works. But now that I know that if I'm buying electronic, just make sure it's not tampered with, because that could have been a lot worse. I don't blame the guy at all, because again, he said he was running it, and I do believe him. I don't think he would do someone dirty like that. He seems like a nice dude. So just buyer beware. When you're on Facebook Marketplace, you might not always be getting what you think you're getting. It's just unfortunate that I did spend $50 on this gauge cluster, but I did get something else for the car that I have, but I'm probably gonna take it to a upholstery shop because I want it to look good and not bad. But it sucks that I wasted money because it didn't work. So now I have this spare cluster shell with a burn up. See, I mean, he's got like tape on it and stuff, and I just, It just doesn't seem right. And maybe that's why it caught on fire, because there's tape on it. And you can see which connection actually caught on fire was this one right here, if you want to focus on it. So I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe there's some oil on it, or I mean, this thing is a little bit dirty on the back, so it could have been countless things. Just a reminder, just be safe when you're working on cars. And that is one of the reasons you should always unplug your battery. And at first when I was taking the gauge cluster out, I didn't. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be smart about it. And I did unplug my battery, but I put everything back in because I wanted to test it out, and then it did that. So make sure you're always testing things before you're actually like buttoning everything back together, unless it's like one of those things that you have to put everything back together for it to work. Because again, if that was in the car when that happened, that could have been absolutely terrible, and I don't know what would have happened. Finished my install, unfortunately, because it caught on fire. But if you guys could please do me a few things: comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, keep doing you, stay motivated. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out and peace.